Welcome, everybody. Today is Wednesday, August 8th, 2018, and this is the Aspire Self-Discovery Series. And today we're talking about life plan. And we're going to be doing a couple of exercises that will help you develop your life plan. But I want to make sure that you are grounded in what all the pieces of the puzzle are. So there are kind of 5 pieces that you need at a minimum. There's probably other things that we could also incorporate into a life plan, but we typically like people to have a sense of their purpose and a sense of their core values. And then the exercises we're going to do today are going to bring you the vision piece and the gap piece, and then we're going to integrate that into the plan piece, which is a lot to do in an hour, so we might not get through all of it, but I'm going to make sure that you have all the information for all of it just in case. So let's talk first about your life purpose. We're not going to do any exercises to help you discover your life purpose today. Many of you have done maybe these types of exercises in the past. I know in Aspire we do these things frequently. We talk about life purpose. The essential things to know about your life purpose is it answers the question, why am I here and what should I be doing with my life? And people could call it your mission in life as well. For many people, it's going to be in line with their religious or spiritual beliefs. Usually what I've found from everybody I've done life purpose work with is that everybody wants to make some kind of contribution to the world with their life. So if you think in terms of that your life purpose probably has something to do with the contribution to the world that you want to make, then usually you're going to be making a contribution to something that matters to you. And the things that matter to you a lot are usually in your core values. And usually what you're going to want to do is use your strengths to contribute towards that thing that matters to you, or it doesn't have to be only one thing that matters to you. It could be anything that matters to you. But our strengths, we light up when we use our strengths. And our strengths invigorate us. So when we're doing something that's in line with our strengths, that's when we're our best selves, and that's when we also offer the best to the world. So if we use this sentence as a grounding point, the reason I exist or my life purpose is to use my strengths to contribute towards something that matters to me, that actually really works well. And I was telling the people in the class this morning, for me, my big thing is human development, personal growth, personal development. And my strengths are coaching, facilitating, teaching, speaking, that sort of thing. So for me, I don't need a specific sentence, but I just know in general that my life purpose is to use all my strengths, my coaching skills, my teaching skills, my speaking skills, all of that teaching to contribute towards personal development in myself and others. So when you get a good sense of your life purpose, what ends up happening is you realize that you can do it all the time. It doesn't just have to be in your job, and your job doesn't have to be directly related to your life purpose. So I'm lucky in that my job is related to my life purpose because I created around my life purpose. So I get to be a coach, which is right in line with my purpose. But when I worked at my last job, which was a technology company, I was a product manager. If I had been really clear on my life purpose then, I would be using it every single day in my work with teams and in my work teaching. And in fact, when I look back into my past, I was doing that. I just wasn't doing it very consciously, but I was sort of naturally gravitating towards my strengths in the area of communication. And I was contributing to other people doing well in their jobs, which was sort of the best I can do in the job that I was at. But if I went back now with the clarity I have now and went back to that job, my guess is I would 2 to 3 times as much focus on my life purpose in that job. And I would probably be twice as effective as a result. So your life purpose sort of adds effectiveness and clarity to everything that you do. And I also, exercise my life purpose in my relationships with my friends and my family and pretty much anything I do. And you'll find the same once you get some clarity about your life purpose. So if you have any questions about life purpose, write them down. I'm going to address them at our next break. But I also want to, before we jump into that, talk about your core values. So we often do a lot of values clarification exercises as well at Aspire. We're not going to stop and do those again today, but you should have an idea of what your core values are. For most people, it's only 5 or 6 things. And only 5 to 6 main, core, most important things to you in your life. So how do you identify what those top 5 or 6 things are? Well, most of the time, values clarification exercises are what we call forced choice. So you might have a deck of cards, you might have a big list of words, but you have to go through the process of elimination, and you have to force yourself to keep comparing 2 words to each other and deciding which is the most important, and it's kind of a grueling process, which is why I don't like those types of exercises. But what ends up happening is you get to, your last 5 words, and they had to go through big battles being pitted against other words and coming out on top over and over and over again. So that sort of crystallizes them as really, really important words to you. So that's why those types of exercises work. What I tend to have people do is think about what would you spend your time and money on. So for me, for example, that works well because I tend to be a very frugal person, but I will spend money that I would never spend on anything else on, my kids' education, for example. Or I would spend money on books, and nobody gets to tell me I can't spend money on books. So while some people will spend money at Starbucks, I'll always rationalize that I get to buy a book and nobody gets to stop me from buying a book. It's that kind of thing. Stuff that maybe other people might think frivolous. So I have somebody in my book club who will only get the book if it's in the library, and she won't pay for the book. But for me, I'll always buy the book because I like buying books. Another thing that we do for values is we'll do projection exercises, which is you're going to go to an island for 2 years with all your needs met. What would you bring if you could only bring 5 things? So in our morning class, one thing we also talked about was the difference between needs and values, because your values are the things that are always going to be important to you no matter what. But you may not actually do much with them at certain times of your life because your needs are about you surviving. And financial security is a great example. So everybody has money on their list in some way, shape, or form because we need money to survive. But for some people, having enough money is a need, but it's not a value. And for others, it's a need and a value. So if I'm one of those people where financial security is probably a value, but money itself is more of a need. So I need it to survive, but when I have enough money, I immediately stop thinking about it, and I'm focused on other things. I had someone talk about health in that way in our earlier session. So when she's not healthy or something's wrong with her health, immediately she's very focused. Or if she's gained a little bit of weight, she's very focused on her health. But then once everything's going fine, she's not thinking about it anymore. Whereas someone else I know is always very focused on health, which means it doesn't matter how fit or in shape she is. She's always focused on making sure that she gets a good workout in, or looking at nutrition and trying various different healthy meals and always trying to get her nutrition up a notch. I'm not like that. My health is more of a need, and it's a little bit of a value, but it's not a value in that I'm always going to be thinking about it. So for me, I'm not always going to be thinking about the most nutritious meals, but I certainly don't want to be hurting myself with my food. So it's important for me to have good health, but once I have the basic things in place, like I'm exercising on a regular basis, I'm eating relatively healthy foods, I'm on top of all my doctor's appointments, I'm not going to think about health anymore. So for me, health is more of a need. For the person that's always thinking about it no matter what, it's a value. Personal growth for me is a value because no matter how much personal growth I achieve, I'm always going to enjoy working on personal growth. So that's one thing that can help you decide what are my values versus what are your needs. Now, sometimes your needs will get in the way of your values, so you'll have a job. And Kathy, I used you as an example actually in one of our sessions where I talked about how art was and creativity was such a value for you, but you had to get your career going, so you would put your art aside, which was your value, to make sure you got the career going, which was the financial security. And a lot of us do that. So you may find that you don't spend as much time on your values that you like. But for each of you, I want you to think and write down just a very draft sentence of what you think your purpose and your values might be, because those are going to be pretty important related to the next exercises we do. And I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording now and just open it up for any questions before we move on. Okay, so the only question we had was just get a little extra glimpse here of the purpose sentence again. I exist to use my strengths to contribute towards something that matters to me. And an example would be, I exist to use my coaching, communication, teaching skills to contribute towards personal growth in myself and others, with the personal growth to myself and others being the something that matters to me. So you're sort of using that as a grounding sentence for your purpose. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so we're going to do our first exercise. What I'd like you to do is get out a pad of paper, and I want you to pick up your pen and turn it into a magic wand. And this is a really important part of this exercise. And my practical people go, oh my God, why do we have to use a magic wand? That's just so silly. But there is a purpose to using a magic wand here. So the magic wand reminds you that there are no restrictions on this exercise. Your goal is it's called the Ideal Day exercise. Your goal is to write a description of your ideal day, or you can describe your ideal life, because I already ran into a problem with it, because in my ideal life, I have different things that I'm doing on different days of the week. And so I have, days that are not work days that are coaching days, and days that are work days, but I don't coach, I do other things. So for me, I have sort of 3 separate types of days that are in my ideal life. So when I did this exercise, I sort of described them all. And it wasn't day 1, day 2, day 3. I just sort of integrated the description. But what you're doing is you're describing an ideal day in your ideal life, or what your ideal life looks like. And the reason we have a magic wand is if you want to be a brain surgeon in your ideal life, then poof, you can be a brain surgeon. If you want to be a gold medal Olympic athlete, poof, you can be that. Now, why are we doing something so completely unrealistic? There's a reason for it. The reason you're allowing yourself to be completely unrealistic is so that you can see what's important to you at your soul level. You're not going to use this to create your actual vision, but you're going to use what you learn from this to create your vision. So you're kind of going to look at what you would fantasize about, and then when you actually do your life plan, you'll put realistic things in your vision. But for now, we're going to go unrealistic, and that's why I've got the magic wand on. So I'm going to set the timer to probably 5 minutes. So I want you to go ahead and start writing now while I'm still blabbing on the phone. Go ahead and start writing. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. And the class, I think I gave more than that, but people were mostly done by 5 minutes, but I just kept going. I only got half of mine done at the end of 5 minutes. So I want you to just go ahead and write. During the 5 minutes, you should feel free to text me any kind of question. I'm going to turn the recording off so the people listening to the video don't have to listen to silence. And so those of you listening to the video, you can just pause the video, and we'll start this exercise, and I'll turn my timer on so you'll all hear the timer when we're done. Are there any questions? Oh, actually, I'm on the recording, so you can't answer me yet. But if there are any questions before we start, then I'll check in as soon as I turn off the recording. Okay, so most of you should be done with your ideal day exercise now. We're moving on to a new exercise called the Wheel of Life. And some of you may have heard of this model before. I'm not the first person that's used it. It's kind of a big thing in the coaching world. What I had everybody do in the seminar is take their paper, which is I want you to do as well right now, and draw a big circle on it. And you don't have to have 8 categories, but 8 categories is the easiest. So if you just draw an X and you draw an up and down and across, you'll have your circle divided into 8 categories, sort of like it looks on the screen, like a little pie chart. Now, you're not going to use the categories on the pie chart. I just have them in here as examples. You're going to choose your own categories. And somebody asked if their categories should correlate with their values. And it turns out that, yes, your categories should have your core values in them. So that's why it's good to know your core values. So, for example, this is not exactly mine because I don't have the love, romance, adventure in there. Kathy, I was actually thinking of you with the adventure. But also there were a lot of people in our morning group that talked about travel and nature as a core value. And also a lot of people have love and romance as a core value. And I was thinking of a couple of you that are on the call now as well today when I was thinking of that. So, but, you know, if I look at my core values, I've got personal growth right here in one big section of the pie chart, and other people might not have that. And then home, creativity, I had one for Aspire, and then I also had one for financial, and then I also had one for something else. So, so what I want you to do is take a look at these categories and choose categories for your Wheel of Life. Here are some other examples. Let's see, career, family, spiritual, health, financial security, or financial prosperity, creativity, education, learning, bucket list, travel, home organization, friends, romance, service, volunteer work, personal growth. So what you want to do is fill up your Wheel of Life with the categories that matter to you. The whole wheel represents your whole life, so nothing should be missing. And so what you want to do is take a look at each section and say, yes, this represents an aspect of my life, and there's no big aspects of my life that are missing in this Wheel of Life. So if there's any questions, go ahead and text me, but if I don't see any texts come in or any chats come in, I'm just going to keep going. So as you're doing this, you're going to now move to a shading exercise. What you're going to do is you're going to shade each part, each section of your Wheel of Life, and I only did it in one section here, based on how satisfied you are with that aspect of your life. So in this example, I shaded the career section of the pie chart by this much, which is about, let's say, 85%. And what this then shows you is your gap. So I'm this much satisfied with my career, but if I was absolutely 100% completely satisfied with a section, then it would be completely shaded. And then what you're going to do is describe your gap. I'm going to break for questions in just a couple seconds here because you may have some clarifying questions about this, and I want to make sure everyone can hear it. So actually, I'm going to break right now for questions. All right, we are back, and I just wanted to kind of share what some of the questions were. So one question that was good was, well, I have way more categories than 8. And I think at some point, if you have the time to really do some values work and narrow things down, you could get your categories down. But for the purposes of today and this video and this learning, it's not a good idea to put yourself through the pain of trying to narrow down the categories. So if you have 16 or 20 or 100 categories, just go ahead and make more slices of your pie, and they'll just be a little narrower, and write all the categories in it, because the shading part of the exercise is really important. Okay? Now, another question that came up, and this didn't come up in this class, but it came up before, is, well, because I have a gap, does that mean that I have to do something about it? And that's a really important question, because I think we all assume that we're going to have our various different sections that are shaded. The ones that are completely shaded, that means we're completely satisfied, so we don't do anything with those in our life plan. And then the ones that are only shaded a little bit, we're not satisfied at all, so we're going to do a lot. And that's actually not true. So I've had people go, you know what, this section of my life I'm not satisfied with, but I'm not going to focus on right now. So for example, I had one person say, you know what, I'm not really happy with my career. It's at 40% right now, but I'm not going to do anything about it right now. I know I'm not happy with it, but it's just not my focus. And that is perfectly fine. The purpose of this exercise is for you to know what your gaps are, and then you get to decide what you're going to do about the gaps. The other thing is you might have something that's a core value that's completely shaded, and I actually do. In a couple of my pie charts, I think my personal growth one was completely shaded, and you still may want to do more because it's a core value, so it's something that you care about, right? So it doesn't matter how many books I read, I'm still going to want to be reading books. It's not like I get done at any point. But for some of these, you just want to get the thing filled, and then you don't want to do anything. So it's completely up to you what you decide to do when you've defined your gaps, but the purpose of the Wheel of Life is for you to be able to see your gaps. So what you're writing after you've done your Wheel of Life and you've done all the shading is, what is it that that blank spot represents? So for this particular example, the career is 85% shaded. Maybe this person likes most of their job, but there's a couple things about their job that they really don't like. It could be their salary, or it could be the fact that they never get to work at home, or it could be a fact that there's one skill set they're not really using, or there's one person that they're having a really hard time getting along, and other than that, their career is perfect. So they write those things down, and that's what you want to do for every piece of the pie. So I'm going to now move on to the next step, which is the final step for this video, and that is your life plan. So you're going to use the information that you got from everything that we did and everything that we talked about. So I'm going to quickly go really fast back to the beginning here. So remember, there's 5 main things that at least you need. You may have other things as well, but an idea of your life purpose. That just gives you a sense of direction. An idea of what your few core values are. An idea of your vision. The idea of your vision should be something that you got from your ideal day exercise. So when you do that ideal day exercise, that should give you an idea of what your vision is. Then your gap, that's what you're getting from your Wheel of Life. You're getting an idea of where your gaps are in your life, and then you get to come up with a plan. So now let's talk about this plan. For your plan, what you're going to do is at the top, you're going to write your 1-year vision. It doesn't have to be a year, but as a default, what do you want your life to look like in 1 year? So that's the first part. And you could write it in a sentence. What I ended up having people do in the in-person session is they wrote a few bullets of what they wanted their life to look like in a year. What I ended up doing is I ended up looking at the gaps from my Wheel of Life and saying, okay, I want to close this gap, and I want to close this part of this gap, and this. So I put maybe 3 or 4 things from the gaps in my Wheel of Life into my vision. And I said, you know, these parts of the gaps are going to be closed in a year. So I wrote my bullets. And your vision informs your goals. So your goals are more specific. But I have something that I do with all Aspire clients, and that is I don't make you do SMART goals if SMART goals aren't in line with your way of working. So for some people, SMART goals are really great. You know, it's nice to have something specific and tangible. So by October 1st, I'm going to have 10,000 people on my email list. That's a nice SMART goal. But some people, as soon as they start putting goals down, they start feeling pressured, and this life planning activity suddenly becomes an unpleasant thing. Because the goals make them feel stifled. So these are kind of your P's on the Myers-Briggs, not your J's. Your J's love goals. Your P's are, oh my gosh, you know, it's just stifling me to have goals. The important thing is you honor who you are. So for one of our people in the in-person session who can't stand writing goals, it just shuts them down. So having goals are not good for this person. But what she did is she worded her goals differently. She worded them in terms of honoring herself. So I want to think more about this, or I want to be more conscious about this. So for her health, she says, I want to be more conscious about drinking water and staying away from pastries. So again, she's not making a SMART goal, But what she's doing is she's saying, I want to be very conscious of these two things, and that works just fine. So your obstacles are the things that are going to prevent you from moving forward on your goals and achieving your vision. So those are just the things that you know about yourself and essentially describe how you're going to get in your own way. So for most of us, it's some form of fear. And for me, for example, I know that what's going to get in my way is if I make it not fun. So I'm kind of on a mantra right now where everything I do, no matter how mundane, I'm going to do with joy. So even if I'm folding a load of laundry, I'm going to be reverent about it and really enjoy the pretty clothes and enjoy how nice they look when they're folded and insert joy into everything I do. That's sort of something that I'm focusing on this. So if something becomes drudgery instead of joyful, I'm not going to bother doing it. Now, other people are very resilient, and for them, the drudgery doesn't matter. What's going to be exciting to them is the most efficient way from point A to point B. So you have to honor yourself when you think about these things. But so for me, since as soon as it isn't fun anymore and as soon as it seems high pressure, I know I'm not going to do it, I develop strategies to get around those obstacles. So I develop strategies to get around my fear. So what's my strategy? Well, I just told you my strategy for inserting joy into it, making every little thing I do fun. Another strategy I have is I take baby steps and I give myself lots of self-nurturing breaks. So instead of going to a meeting tonight, I ended up canceling it to spend time with my kids because I could just feel that there was something that needed to happen there and there was an imbalance. And I was getting tired and grumpy, so I didn't want to go to this networking event. So I canceled it. So that is actually one of my strategies for staying on track, is giving myself breaks and not feeling guilty about it along the way. And when I honor that, I tend to move forward at a much more steady pace. So I've babbled through all this time. I'm hoping that while I'm babbling, you're actually writing your goals down. You're writing your plan, and then the next steps, which is the next bullet, that's just what you're going to be doing in the next 3 months or 2 months, just a few specific actionable items. So for those of you that are on the live call, we are now going to go around and debrief. And you may not be done. I didn't get done in a whole 2-hour class this morning. So you might not be done with it all, but what I'd like to do is have you go around and just kind of share where you're at right now and ask any questions. For those of you who are just listening to the recording and you're not on live, my email is at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to reach out to me anytime with questions on this, and I would be happy to help you.